2017.
Yeah. Good year.
We were both better looking. I know it's not possible.
The Hitler's tea house.
Yeah.
You know, of course they do. All right, every fucking swastika there's gone. You know, we're going to scrub the place clean. The Berghoff, we're just going to demolish that. No one needs to see that again.
Yeah.
Everyone knows about those things. Krampnitz, the hell is Krampnitz?
It's big swastika, all done in little Roman Empire mosaic style. And of course, Hitler took a lot of his stuff from Roman Empire, the eagles, the standards, the hailing was Hail Caesar, and made that into Hail Hitler.
Of course, within National Socialism, there's different factions. And we have the Knight of the Long Knives, we have the SA fighting the SS against the SA. We have this, and this happens in every community, in every group, and you see it in Christianity. There's not one Christianity, there's 33,000 forms of Christianity. They're all got different opinions. You think National Socialism was any different? Kameraden, today is a special day. I'm going to introduce a new segment of the Klovekorn the Relic series, the segment being called Rueckblick, which is German for looking back. It's an opportunity to reflect on previous movies, particularly with personalities who've appeared in the movies, to give us an insight into the behind-the-scenes activities and events and learnings of that particular film clip or documentary. I hope you enjoy the Rueckblick today. The Rueckblick will be on Krampnitz, and I have my very dear friend Simon coming to the Hauptquartier today, so let's go. Welcome, Kameraden, to this episode, the first episode of Rueckblick. And I'm here with my very dear friend Simon Thomson. Simon, how are you doing?
Yeah, good Henning, how are you?
I'm alright, we're finally here.
We're here. We've talked about this for a long time.
5 years we've been talking about doing this.
What is Rueckblick?
Rueckblick.
Rueckblick.
Rueckblick. Blick is a looking.
Okay.
Like a blick is like this,
Oh.
and a Rueck is the back, or literally the back. Man Rücken.
Yeah.
So I'm looking back.
Looking back. So looking back on our adventures.
Yes,
In
2017.
Yeah. It's a good year.
We were both better looking. I know it's not possible. Well, I've just lost 7 kilos.
Yeah, you're looking good.
Due to personal events, dramas, but it is what it is. So, and you're looking good too. So
life's a journey.
You're looking like a Scottish warrior. So 2017, we said let's go to Germany. And I remember the flight there, and then me looking for you in I think it was Frankfurt.
Frankfurt Airport, yeah. We were doing laps around the airport in our little home for the week.
You know, this is a tall guy. I'm going to see him, and I was like, where is he? This bearded Scottish wild man. And sure enough, there you were, and you had your cap on, that cap, you know, and then...
because I'd just come from, visiting my wife in Scotland to meet up with you in Germany.
And that's where you had the Scottish cap with
Thomson
or
a
something?
little grey,
Yeah, and then you know, we gave each other a big hug, and we're here.
Yeah.
And then we went to the Winnebago, and we started travelling.
That's it. It was straight off to Rueckblick.
And this segment is about Krampnitz, which was actually towards the very end of our journey.
Yeah, we'd sort of gone up and done our lap coming back down towards Bavaria, sort of bypassing Berlin. Yeah.
And Krampnitz, now we don't need to talk about Krampnitz because if you haven't seen the video, Klovekorn the Relic Hunter video on Krampnitz, you got to watch it. But you will see it now in any case, just with our commentary, which is the whole purpose of Rueckblick. So well, let's start with a drink.
What have we got?
Oh, this is Chivas Regal 1801.
Hello.
Yeah. Well, it's Scottish, so I thought it's over there. There's your. Actually, this glass is made in Germany, hand-blown glass.
That's beautiful.
And I'll put it at the end description where that comes from. It's a very special piece.
Yeah.
and some Chivas Regal. I think it's a blend of 12 Scottish whiskies. Do you know where the 1801 comes from? It's when
Barreled in 1801?
it's when his shop. Yeah, it's when his shop opened.
Oh right, she was opened in
Wherever it is.
1801.
Yeah,
Wow.
it sounds like I know what I'm talking about. I only know the date is when his shop opened. I don't know where the shop was. I'm presuming it was in Glasgow or Edinburgh or. Right now, every Scottish person in Scotland is going, what's with this German? He doesn't even know anything about what he's drinking.
I thought this guy knew about history.
So all I know it's good. That's why we drink it.
Yeah.
So Prost.
Sludger.
Beautiful. And I'm going to have a cigar. Do you want a cigar?
Yeah,
Right.
I won't say no to that. That is a smooth drop.
A very, very dear
Beautiful.
friend of mine. It is a very dear friend of mine. Pat gave me that wonderful cigar box. Thanks, Pat. Takes pride of place in the Hauptquartier of Klovekorn the Relic, and of course, at this point, we have to say to all the children and adults in the room that smoking is very bad for you, and you shouldn't do it. However, we don't really smoke, do we, Simon? We just enjoy the occasional Cuban cigar.
Usually the occasional cigar, yeah. No, not big on haven't bought. I think it's been over a year since I bought a packet of cigarettes, so yeah. It's 12 months to no smoking. Thank you very much.
Well done, Simon. That's what we want to hear. Krampnitz.
Krampnitz.
Where do we start? Oh, well, we start by watching the video.
Start by watching the video. Let's fire that up.
What did you do today?
So yeah. Today.
Yeah, actually, just pause that. I'm keen to hear what your day was like.
My day today was fairly smooth. Today was a couple of safety orders at some construction sites around town. So
Okay.
yeah, making sure that everyone out there in the construction world is staying safe in Adelaide. Yourself?
Went to the beach, Silver Sands.
Yeah, nice for some.
Oh,
We slug it out in the working class all day. Mr. Klovekorn here is
well, we're working now. We're working now. Silver Sands with the little chimney up on
love the little chimney.
turquoise water.
Little mountain goats, those things.
Went for a dip. Actually, I went in and always a bit wary being a kraut in Australia in the environment, and I thought, beautiful turquoise waters, everything was just perfect. I put some photos in, and I step into the water, and literally my left foot gives way, and I feel like it's all I'm falling down a hole or something. And it was a little stingray that I'd stepped on.
Oh,
and I was very lucky not to have it give me a nip or a
little
thing.
slash to the foot or something.
Slash.
Yeah.
And so I broke the land speed record by
getting out of the water.
yeah. Sorry, that was my day. Let's go.
Right. Yeah. All right. Let's.
That's why I'm dressed so casually. No bow tie today.
The old Krampnitz video.
I love the music to this. It's exciting. The Klovekorn the Relic Hunter logo with its Thor hammer that I still wear. 1,300 years old. Probably no one knows that. That's why we do these things.
Yeah.
Rueckblick.
I'm standing in front of Krampnitz, an abandoned Nazi military base.
God, you've aged.
Just
Yeah, I've got a lot more wrinkles.
it's a
I have aged.
set of buildings.
I've got a lot more hair in that shot than I do.
Did you dye your hair back then?
To house between
I didn't dye it, no.
Yeah.
Thanks for noticing that I put some colour in.
Nazis utilised this complex from 1937 on.
This is astonishing. It's all black because there's a massive fire in that building.
Yeah.
Ceasefire!
Look.
Ceasefire!
Pausing the.
Ceasefire. It's all black because there was a massive fire in that building.
Yeah.
Massive
Yeah, I
fire.
remember. Not the fire, obviously, but yeah, it was very dark, very, very charred.
And that's where the newspapers were found.
Yeah, amazingly, newspapers survived the fire.
Well, we found them as insulation backing behind some panels.
That's right.
And actually, I have that somewhere. I have that somewhere because I was intending to frame it. So we need to do
even
that.
something from like around the 60s. It wasn't just immediately post-war. There was a bit of a gap. It was like, 1963, 68 sort of Russian newspapers.
Right, because the Russians took over the facility at the end of World War II and made it into their own facility. It is mentioned in there.
That's-
It was the
yeah.
Russian Guards Regiment or something.
I do recall on the way down from Prora, we went past Checkpoint Charlie.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're obviously into what was once East German territory.
And although I can't speak Russian well, although I did have a lovely Russian girlfriend, Margarita, if you're ever watching, my Russian was never as good as it should have been. Just by looking at the pictures, you could see the events and the propaganda and the you know, I think it was all about the wall, which they call the anti-fascism wall. We look at it as the Berlin Wall protecting us from Russian political influence, and the irony is they look at that wall as protecting them from American
I suppose it
capitalism.
was more importantly protecting the inhabitants behind the wall that weren't allowed to leave and be terrorised by the capitalist nature of the Western world,
Yes, that's right, safeguarding them
Yeah,
from consumerism,
whether they wanted to or not.
as we have Chivas Regal and Cohiba cigars with us today.
Yeah.
By April of 1945 is the where we are at the moment.
Mm.
vacated this leadership school properly, and only the day after having vacated it, the Russians
So was a leadership school similar to Vogelsang?
for several decades after
No, I think Vogelsang was very much a leadership and theological training school with broad range of leadership skills were being taught there, including SS philosophy, Norse gods and goddesses,
Right.
racial theory. None of that happened here. This was, as far as I understand, purely initially a school for the cavalry, and then they had other motorized units, messenger units.
So more purely for military rather than what would be future Nazi hierarchy.
Oh, stop!
Yep. Ceasefire.
Ceasefire. Now, that shot there.
Those beautiful motifs.
Now, I've just said this was purely a military school, and yet, yes and no, because we can see by that image there, that is an Aryan man, and I think he's naked. We'd have to review it. So there's a number of stone reliefs that have been put into some of these buildings, and there's a few of them throughout the video, and many of these were destroyed, and I'm glad we've got footage of it. So here we've got, well, it's a cavalry school, and there's fighting going on, and there's
Two horses
two horses.
with riders. Yeah.
Horses really important in German military history. The Prussians, the Saxons, really big on their horses. You'll find the symbol of a white horse in one of our coat of arms of one of our states. And people were buying horses from Germany because they were great horses. The Germans loved their horses. And even though of the motorized capability of the Wehrmacht, horses were still, an important part of the fabric of the Wehrmacht. And key when they were bogged in Stalingrad and in the winter in the Eastern Campaign, and the motorbikes and the trucks couldn't get through, was all done by horses.
Yeah. Wow.
And there, that little, well, actually, it wasn't that little.
It's quite large. It would have been about 3 doorway spans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those, what do you call them? Effigies, stone carvings.
Stone reliefs.
Reliefs.
Yeah.
They portray or they reinforce this Nazi ideology of where they come from, race, the Aryan race, I guess, that they're trying to remind the soldiers of, that in their ideology they're trying to protect through this war.
I do recall too, though, that not all of them remained as such. There were some that the Russians had, or the Soviets had replaced with their own. I think some sort of pictures of cars with the sickle and hammer emblem and things like that on it. But that one, obviously, horses may have some significance to the Soviets or the Russians as well. They must have liked that one to keep it intact, especially if it. It must have been really nice for them to leave the relief of Hermann.
actually, you raise a really good point. Yes, there was a lot of Soviet era stuff there. That's what makes Krampnitz so fascinating. And as I understand, it was purchased by a private entity, and I think it's been sold and purchased several times over. Part of the reason why we do this is so that we record history, so that we can look back at what it looked like or what it looks like now before all of these places get demolished. And many of them have been demolished.
Yeah.
And history is just being eradicated.
That's happening everywhere, isn't it? I mean, with the Syrian war that was going on, a lot of the old monuments were being destroyed and places ransacked. Same thing happened in Iraq, same thing's happened in Israel, Palestine.
The big Buddha statue's gone, and
Yeah.
it's terrible.
Yeah, all over the world. So
And we have so much to learn from history, including Nazi history, including Russian history.
yeah,
And yet, what do? They just develop it all.
yeah, yeah.
And yes, so when we went there and we saw the USSR reliefs and the red, I think it's the 5-pointed star of the USSR, and
that's right.
they had those patch emblems, assuming from the Guards regiment that was there. What I find really fascinating about that, Simon, is that they didn't remove the Nazi stuff. Not completely.
No.
Why?
Well, yeah. Maybe there were parts of the base they didn't take over for some reason, didn't use, didn't need.
It was a big base.
There's a very big base.
There's like 50
yeah.
buildings in there.
Yeah,
More.
yeah.
I mean,
Huge.
we were there walking the whole day, and we probably saw 30% of it. Or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
And the weeds were up to here.
Huge, crazy. Hadn't been touched. Not for many years.
Complicit in the assassination attempt on Hitler in July 19...
Yep. So Kramer was anti-Hitler, which is interesting.
He was
Kramer.
a friend of Graf von Stauffenberg.
And of course, he was friends with Stauffenberg.
Ah, right.
Oh,
nice.
sorry, ceasefire.
Ceasefire,
Another point of discussion. So we
Von Stauffenberg.
in the West, I think in historic terms, they try to keep things simple by simply saying everything with Nazis is bad. Of course, there's nuances to that. And here we have a nuance. Here we have Kramer, von Stauffenberg, and there were many, many Nazis who were ardent National Socialists, but they wanted Hitler dead. And there's this theory which says, oh, well, they weren't Nazis, they just saw the evil in Hitler and wanted Hitler gone, and they're the good guys. Well, actually, no, because they were still Nazis, and they wanted to win as Nazis, and they wanted the National Socialist regime to actually win as they saw National Socialism. And of course, within National Socialism, there's different factions. And we have the Knight of the Long Knives, we have the SA fighting the SS against the SA. We have this, and this happens in every community, in every group. And you see it in Christianity. There's not one Christianity, there's 33,000 forms of Christianity. They're all got different opinions. You think National Socialism was any different? No.
No.
They recognized at that point Hitler's gone completely mad, but they were actually still Nazis. It's a very interesting nuance, because they wanted to continue the parts of the National Socialist ideology that they felt was correct. And von Stauffenberg is therefore often misrepresented. He's represented as this hero of the left fighting against Hitler. A great amount of courage was required to do that at that time, and of course he lost his life along with the co-conspirators. But he was actually still a Nazi. It's an interesting nuance. It's actually quite complicated, and that's why in history they don't want the complication. They just make it very easy, and they say, "Oh no, it's black and white." There's a lot of nuances there.
Very complicated. I mean, how many organisations have we seen with similar issues? I mean, from lodges within Freemasonry to social clubs to sporting clubs, there's factions everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, some people have bigger egos and want things their way over other people, and it creates chaos. This was happening on a national scale. This is an entire country. Now, of course, there's going to be different factions and people with different ideas. It's the nature of the world. It's the nature of humans. You know, people want different things. Even if they're similar and aligned in some ideals, there's still going to be, you know, parts where people diverge from each other.
Yes, and I think a lot of Nazis even were absolutely shocked at the state of the camps and what occurred there, and so there's nuances there that I think nowadays we very rarely discuss in historic circles, far less in the general public because it's just far too complex. But yeah, interesting, isn't it? How they formed a group to try and kill Hitler, and of course that never happened. That amazing Olympic basketball court with the Olympic sign at the back.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Oh, the flooring, it all just looks like it's exploded.
There was still a basketball there.
Yeah.
Imagine the Russians playing basketball with still the Nazi Olympic symbol in the back. And of course the Nazi Olympic Games 36, incredible spectacle. And we could have a whole show about the Nazi Olympics and some of the misinformation that exists in relation to things that happened there. A lot of Hollywood movies made in this place.
Yeah. Oh, that beautiful ballroom features in a lot of these. And you mentioned von Stauffenberg. I think Valkyrie was one of the movies filmed here as well.
I mean, that ceiling, all brick.
Mm.
Who builds like that? The Germans do.
Yeah. There's got to be a reason behind that.
Incredible. I mean, they put money into that. Oh, this is the toilet block. One of the few buildings that the Russians demolished, and then they put those, what do you call them, squatting toilets.
Yeah.
I've seen squatting toilets in some of the Middle Eastern countries I've visited.
Asian countries as well I've been to. They've got the same sort of, similar sort of fashion.
So have they got hoses to?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Squat toilet, a bucket next to it of toilet paper, and hose to.
It's probably more hygienic. Oh, here's the newspaper.
Ah, there we are.
Anyone who can speak Russian who can translate that title for us, that would be a great help. Oh, here's another one of those reliefs. That's a motorized unit, a messenger providing some letters or orders. These are your orders.
Yeah.
Fantastic relief. I mean, if you're a member of that motorized unit, that's what we do. This is our house.
But they've actually gone to the effort of finding someone to create that just to put on that doorway. It could have just been a blank thing with a metal sign or something embossed or whatever. But no, they got a carved relief.
Here's the USSR stuff.
That's right.
Red flags.
Someone's attempt to block up a doorway.
Now, for all those people who think that we smashed that doorway down,
no, not at all.
We had no tools, we had no hammers with us, we had a little backpack with some water in it. Other relic hunters have been here before us, and in fact YouTube is full of people who've been there well before we were there in 2017. And I think we came from, I can't quite remember where it was, I think I mentioned in the movie from the fields, and you could just walk in. But then we noticed in some other parts they had fences up. It's a bit hit and miss.
Yeah.
Very dangerous, by the way, guys. We've been doing this for many years. We have a engineering background and risk background. We know what to get ourselves into, what not to get ourselves into. Don't do this. Let us do it, and you watch the show. But if you're irresponsible enough to go and have a look at these things, don't stand on things you shouldn't be standing on.
No, none of these things are worth dying for.
No. Very interesting National Socialist architecture here. Plain, very plain, and yet powerful in its own way. The Reichskanzlei in Berlin, of course, was completely wiped out by the Russians. The Russians actually took the bricks or the red granite from Hitler's Reichskanzlei and they used that, and he reused it in the train system underground as just material. And they also built this big Russian victory monument from the red marble of Hitler's Reichskanzlei or headquarters in Berlin. So if you're in Berlin and you're a German, undergoing your normal day-to-day activities, you're constantly reminded of having been beaten by the Russians. This was a spectacular building that looks very similar to the Reichskanzlei. That makes this building incredibly important from historic terms. It had this incredible mosaic.
Oh, that's right.
So we're looking at the mosaic.
On the roof, was it? The ceiling?
Yeah.
I believe, yeah.
We weren't well prepared, or I wasn't well prepared. We didn't have all the lights that we needed. We weren't even expecting to go in there. Oh, let's ceasefire.
Ceasefire.
There's a story here. Almost at the end. In Krampnitz, and we only know this because we saw other YouTubers, there's this big mosaic of a Nazi swastika.
The eagle,
And it's essentially, whether it is or it isn't, it's more or less recognized as the last swastika in Germany. And we wanted to see it. We wanted to show it. We were going around every building trying to find this, we saw pictures of it, this big swastika, all done in little Roman Empire mosaic style. And of course Hitler took a lot of his stuff from the Roman Empire, the eagles, the standards, the hailing was Hail Caesar, and made that into Hail Hitler. A lot of copying going on because the Roman Empire for 1,000 years was the Holy Roman Empire under the German nation. The Holy Roman emperors were crowned in Aachen in Germany. So the connection between the Roman Empire and Germany is exceptionally tight, and Hitler was using that symbology significantly by harking back to that, just like Mussolini did. Mussolini was using that in his new fascist government. A lot of psychological counterplay there by look at Italy. We can't, we're a broken nation. If you bring me in as Mussolini, I'm going to bring back the Roman Empire. Both Hitler and Mussolini, who were best friends, of course, worked on that. And so we go to this building, and we're looking everywhere. And all these buildings for normal garrison training, they're nice buildings, but there's no big whopping swastika anywhere. So where's the swastika? And time's running out. And we had other places to go, and we needed to find a place to put the Winnebago mobile and rest and eat, and we are human, we do need to eat and drink on occasion. And I remember that building was the only building that was closed to us. No other relic hunter had been there with a sledgehammer breaking through the doors, and everything was bricked up. And I was so upset because all I wanted to do is just find this last swastika in Germany. And I remember we went around the building a few times. We looked at the windows. Is there a window here that's open? Nothing was open. I don't know whether you can remember this, Simon.
I do remember, yeah.
And we went to the side of this building, and there was a little keller or a cellar window, and we rested on it. And I think that it must have just there was some sporadic rain or something, and I think I sat on a log, and you decided to sit on this metal bar, and we sit on it, and we collapse through the metal bar and fall into the cellar.
Yeah, that's right.
Take it as you will.
Yeah,
that was interesting.
That was shocking. That was the last few minutes.
So we're in some dark cellar here.
Yeah, this was us having fallen through the cellar.
Found the last remaining swastika of Germany. Ceasefire. Sorry to do this to you, Simon, but it's the whole purpose of doing this.
Yeah.
they'd gone to the effort of brick walls, brick ceilings. Very highly intensive way to make a ceiling.
That is very odd. choice.
They would have to put all this wooden framework up. They would have to brick the ceiling in a horizontal. They would need to have that dry, and then they would need to remove very substantial oak or whatever wood framework. Because of course nowadays we would pour concrete with what do you call it, Rio, reinforcing rods that binds it all together. And we knew something was up because the handrail to the stairs was different to all the other buildings we'd been to.
Yeah, it was like this beautiful sandstone or marble kind of.
We knew something was up. It was like,
it's an important building.
This is it. It was getting dark outside.
Yeah.
I was hot and bothered.
Pissed off from searching so long and hard and all these buildings, and we couldn't find it anywhere.
And then at the very last, at the 11th hour, we see this handrail with some amazing wood leading up, and we went, hello. There's a difference. There's an atmosphere. And it was dark because, whoever it was had bricked up all the windows and stuff. And it was really hard to see, but you could even, the texture was different. That's what I remember about the scene. We hadn't yet realized the big swastika was in that building.
No, but we knew something was up.
Now, in all the YouTube videos we'd seen prior, this thing was completely open, with all the mosaic showing. It was like a 4 meter by 6 meter by 6 meter, and all we saw was this little hole that somebody put into it. And here we see this amazing mosaic.
That's right. Someone had they put the ceiling in.
Yeah, to hide it.
But someone had been there before us and punched a bit of a hole through.
And then right at the end, we show this amazing mosaic.
Yeah. Beautiful.
It actually looked as though somebody had made this into an office block at some point. They'd used this Hardy Flex material or something just to, obviously not the Russians after World War II, this must have been the Germans now in the 70s, 80s or 90s. After reunification, I'm assuming. It looked like somebody had just been there and had just made it into an office block.
Fairly recently though.
You know what I find really weird about all this stuff? After World War II, of course, the Allies came in with a really big denazification program. And we can see the results of that today. You ask any young German, with some exception, there is a very particular view on National Socialism. And it's no secret that I'm trying to choose my words very carefully here. That it was an evil regime, and that the youth of today want to shy away from this horrible era in history. And yet, when was that? 2017. What the hell is a 6 meter mosaic of a swastika doing here? In a Germany that's been completely
How did that survive for so long?
How does that work?
I think because clearly no one's gone through that facility in quite some time until recent years when you said it's been developed and sold.
But Simon, you had the Berghof, Hitler's house, which was demolished in the 90s. You have a law in place in Germany where veterans can't wear their own medals whether they were Nazis or not Nazis. In fact, most veterans were not Nazis because to be a real Nazi, an actual Nazi, you had to be a member of the party. It's no different to being a member of the Labour Party or Liberal Party. You had to sign up, a political movement. And a lot of these Germans were farmers,
just soldiers,
bakers. Yes, of course, some volunteered, but as soldiers,
the vast majority were not members of the Party of National Socialists.
And they would have been not pressured, I guess, but societal pressure to enlist in the same way that Australians, English, Americans were socially pressured to enlist in drafts, and giving you the old the white feather of cowardice if you dodged the draft or didn't go.
So
similar sort of fashion there. I mean, we look at obviously coming from Australia and a very English American worldview. They always paint the Nazis as every one of them was a evil fucking no good bastard.
Well, the Hollywood villain.
The Hollywood villain, yeah. But the reality is that these were just guys, Germans, everyday Germans living in Germany that were pressured to fight for Germany. Not fight for the Nazi party, they were fighting for their own livelihood, really.
Spot on, Simon. I remember I've had the opportunity and privilege to interview a lot of war veterans. If you look at the channel, you'll see there's an interview with a Wehrmacht veteran called Erich Warmer, who unfortunately died recently. And he in that interview talks about his experience as a soldier. But what I actually found really interesting about the interview is that when I posed political questions to Herr Warmer,
it was of interest.
Not only was it not of interest, he wasn't really clued into the politics. He was all about, I was in this part of Germany, I come from a farming family, I get called up, I get basic training, I get given a rifle, and off you go to war. And when any question about, really, really deep questions about the theory of National Socialism, just wasn't that level of awareness even. And that's not to say, of course, there were soldiers who were members of the party who were ardent National Socialists who were fully behind it, of course. Now, how do we get to that point? Oh, because there's this big swastika there.
The denazification of Germany,
We've got a complete denazification of Germany, yet 2017, we've still got these massive, really fascinating.
You could say it has been sort of, spoken of as the last swastika in Germany. I mean, when you look at them going to the point of denazifying, I mean, for one, it's also probably the only Russian star.
That's right.
As well, like they haven't bothered to go there. But then when you think about, they're making a political statement by doing it, you ask people about, do you know of Hitler's tea house? Of course they do. All right, every fucking swastika there's gone. We're going to scrub the place clean. The Berghof, we're just going to demolish that. No one needs to see that again. Everyone knows about those things. Krampnitz, the hell is Krampnitz?
So,
I mean, for an effort to value, the way these governments think, ratio, that maybe Krampnitz wasn't worth the effort of sending a special team in to scrub out every last swastika that could be found. Maybe their efforts are best served in the heartland of Bavaria and places like that, Now
this is an interesting question. We've finished watching the video, but the discussion continues. I've been to East Germany, again, after we travelled. I've been to Bavaria, which was the heartland of National Socialism. And what I find is that you can remove swastikas from buildings, and there's a whole bunch of buildings there with just the eagle now, and the swastika's been chiseled out. Or you can have a full denazification system, and yet National Socialism lives on in the people, irrespective of doing all of those things. I mean, let's not go into that, but it's I've seen it myself in going to some of the small villages, and they're there with their imperial flags, and within the agrarian subculture of Bavaria, Franconia, Eastern Germany, there is still remnants of this philosophy, political movement that's linked to the land, that's linked to national pride, which in Germany has almost been beaten out of the Germans. That's why, I don't know all the figures, but there are a number of political parties that still get, Reichstags, it's not Reichstag, the Bundestag now, seats because they represent that way of thinking. So it's interesting. You can remove swastikas, but they haven't quite yet succeeded in removing
the ideology.
It's almost like they've done, what was done to Germany after World War One, with the stripping back of the gold, of that national identity of you Germans are all bad. Sit in your corner and think about what you've done. They've sort of done that again, which is what gave rise to the nationalists. By pounding them down so hard, of course you're going to get some sort of resistance and something's going to break through. And Hitler was what was broke through.
What a controversial thing to say, Simon.
It is a controversial thing to say. Hitler is what broke through, and the Nazism was what broke through, and then ended up taking over. And now it seems that whether it's the German government or the American influence over the German government's doing the same thing and pushing all this back down again. But it almost seems like you're just biding time until you've pushed people down far enough that they're going to rise up again, and you'll see a similar thing. It's history repeating. I suppose the idea is that we learn from history. Is why we do this. Is why we make these shows.
Learn from history. Watch this channel, please, so we can learn from history.
Yeah.
Everything you've said there is very insightful. We have the German Kaiser, who's related to the Russian Tsar, who's related to the English monarchy, and the English Empire, who, of course, in the West we grow up as, the English Empire is so wonderful, and it is. There's many parts of the English Empire that are wonderful, but they went and they conquered lands across the whole globe. They raped, they pillaged, they removed the resources.
Look at what they did to India.
India,
entire India subcontinent.
Right. And this is interesting. Hitler in his speeches, not that anyone ever listens or reads to the speeches, right? And I encourage it, not so that you become a National Socialist, that is a preposterous opinion, but that you learn what Simon was just on about, understand.
It's about looking at history at face value, removing the political ideals and just looking at what happened. What happened.
Why?
At the facts.
Why do things happen?
The cause and effect.
Hitler in his speeches would often refer to the English Empire as morally corrupt because they go around the globe removing culture.
Absolutely.
And now it's all coming back. English statues are being torn apart, and people want compensation.
Yeah.
They want to learn their languages again. Look at what happened with the Australian Aborigines.
Absolutely.
And interestingly enough, Hitler in his speeches made mention of that, and Hitler wanted to free India from British rule. Hitler wanted to free Iran. That's never talked about. This doesn't make me a National Socialist. I'm simply saying what is never said. This is about learning from history. And the Kaiser didn't want World War I to happen. No. He wrote to his relative saying, "Please don't mobilize." What did the Russians do? They mobilized. There was nothing but letters of just everyone calm down. This is a Balkan dispute. Let's keep it Balkan. Next thing you know, people start mobilizing. Wars are declared. The war commences. No enemy soldier, from the perspective of the German Empire, ever fought on German territory. Germans had beat the Russians in the Battle of Tannenberg 1917. They won against the Russians in the east, put their troops to the west, and it never got to a fight within Germany because the Kaiser abdicated. And we can go into Bismarck. Bismarck didn't want German colonialism. He said, we don't want to be like the English. Bismarck didn't want that. It was a great Germany. More Nobel Prizes were won during the German Empire than at any other time. And it was because the German trading vessels were not allowed in English ports overseas that the Germans had to create a colonial network. All these nuances that, again, isn't usually talked about. Great doctoral thesis by Orff that I've read about that. Germany is then made responsible for a war that arguably that they didn't start and weren't responsible for.
I always find it weird that Austria goes to war with Hungary and Germany loses.
Germany loses its lands in the east. Germany loses Alsace and Lorraine.
Yeah.
Germany pays reparations for a war that didn't start. The whole thing is just terrible.
Yeah.
Because the English and the Germans are blood brothers. They didn't want to fight each other. It was the French who were always the enemy, not the Germans. Germany gets beaten up. No air force. Everything is
Not allowed
just.
to have a navy. Not allowed to.
And then you get Hitler.
Yeah. You're pushing people down so far.
Yeah.
Something's going to push back.
Squash them, can't have national pride, can't do this, can't do that. And then Hitler of course comes up from the people and says, hang on a minute, this isn't right. Stabbed in the back by the communists in 1917 when the armaments production was halted. We couldn't even fight, otherwise we could have won World War One. The reparations, the destruction of our sovereignty. And this is from an empire that goes around pillaging the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And you're telling me about that you're on some moral high ground. And this is well before the word Holocaust came about. We don't talk about the Russian Holodomor, which is just, we just don't talk about the Russians killing millions of people, starving them in Ukraine. Because the Russians were allies, so we just don't talk about that history. The key question is, Simon, is Germany at a point now where this is all going to repeat? In other words,
I think so. I think give it another 10, 20 years, I think we'll see a rise. I mean, there's already, they've got limitations on right-wing parties having seats within the government.
Yeah,
certain parties aren't allowed to have more than 10 or so seats.
So welcome to a modern democracy.
Yeah.
Where you can say whatever you want and you can vote whoever you want as long as you vote from this list.
Yeah.
And these are the restrictions of your. And you can say whatever you want except if you say this and this and this, we'll throw you in jail.
Yeah.
That's not a democracy.
I think that's part of culture around the world shifting though. I mean, you look at the recent Australian elections, where it was once thought that we were rigged in the same way, that unless you're a member of the Liberal Party or the Labor Party prepared to go head to head with an opponent in your same seat, that was how you got into politics. And yet how many of these new Teal faction, the Teal seats, the independents that don't align to any party or each other,
the rise of the Teals
have come about because people are starting to wake up that why do we need to listen to these people that aren't us telling us how to behave and how we should vote. We can vote for an independent. We can have our voice in Parliament that isn't swayed by one side or the other. I mean, I'm lucky enough to live in a seat that taken by Rebecca Sharkey, who I think is a wonderful politician. She certainly fights for her seat. She doesn't fight for any other party or any faction or anything material. She does what she believes morally is right for the people of her electorate, which I'm sure that these other independents in New South Wales, and I think 3 of them in South Australia came out this year, that will fight for their people, because that's a democracy, and we've come to a point where suddenly these people are breaking through, and my hope is that in the next sort of 10, 15, 20 years that suddenly these two parties, the Liberal and Labor parties, don't hold the majority of power, that they may be able to form a government, but it is always going to be kept in check by a third party or a third grouping of people that can lead with sense and make sure that they don't go too far and overstretch. I think the same thing with Germany. I mean, you get enough people voting for these other parties that aren't allowed to have seats. I mean, there's going to be other ways. They'll find other ways in. There will be a shift, and suddenly it won't be parties anymore. It'll be a group of independents that think along the same way, that won't form a party because that's not what the people want. People want representation for their seat, their people.
Yeah. Well, there's a great example of that is the Alternative für Deutschland, the Alternative for Germany party. The left call them all Nazis.
Yeah.
That's because anything right of left is Nazis.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's just.
But then there's more right than them, isn't there?
They see Nazis everywhere.
Yeah.
And the AfD, as we call them in Germany, they're not Nazis. In fact, in their constitution, I think the very first clause, if I stand corrected, I'm happy to be, but it says if you're a Nazi, we don't want you, or white supremacists is probably a better way of putting it.
Yeah.
Because again, there's a difference there. National Socialism is a political movement. You know, whereas bigoted white supremacy is something else entirely.
Absolutely.
But we come to this where we're also at a day and age where everybody is an evil Nazi if they were a Nazi. But if you're Werner von Braun and you're the rocket scientist that can help us win the future war against Russia and take a man to the moon, we'll take a Nazi.
Yeah.
We'll take the Nazi and all the Nazi scientists and we'll put them into our NASA program.
Talking about Operation Paperclip.
And we'll get to the moon before the Russians do.
Yeah.
And those Nazis aren't bad, Simon.
What are you talking about?
They're
bombs
good
and
Nazis. They're good Nazis all of a sudden.
Yeah.
You know. Or how about let's throw bombs on civilians in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and rather than going, actually that is a morally apprehensible thing to do because defenseless civilians, by all the conventions known to man and just sheer moral hindsight, tells us that that's wrong. It's a wrong thing to do. If you're going to fight a war, it's soldier against soldier. It's not dropping an atom bomb on a civilian population that just that decimates everything.
Yeah.
But how is that portrayed in the media? Well, we had to.
That won the war.
Won the war.
Yeah.
So it's okay.
The end justifies the means.
Ends justify the means.
As long as it's on your side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's not how this works. And I hope in the future that the Nazi war crimes, those that were, are given the moral weight that they should be, and it should be condemned. And I also believe that the Allied war crimes also need to be condemned.
Absolutely.
Because this is not about right or left or up and down. It's actually about what is the right thing to do. And now we have the United Nations charters of, about protection of minority groups and protection of this and that, the other, as they should be. And let that be the measure of our combined moral compass. But hang on a minute, if you've got veto powers, you don't.
That's different. Yeah.
You just go and invade sovereign countries and you don't forget about the United Nations. And I'm being very critical there of America, the United States of America. But at least in America, you have a democracy where you can actually express an opinion.
Yeah.
Without being locked up in jail.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's a dangerous territory in Germany, I think, right now. And perhaps in 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 or 30 years, the pendulum will swing. We haven't learned from history.
Yeah, absolutely.
Final thoughts, closing thoughts from Mr. Thomson.
Closing thoughts. That Krampnitz was an interesting find. It's not something, when we're doing a World War II tour of Germany, that sort of comes to mind to the everyday person, but certainly it was worth the visit. Certainly good to see. You've got such a great range there. You've got the original German buildings that were made during the war. You've got the Russian influence that have come and taken over. So there's you can see sort of a passage through time, and there was even parts of the base that we saw that clearly haven't been used since 1945 or touched. So it's sort of good to see that. It was a great, what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of spectrum of time in Germany from the war through to the Soviet occupation. I'm really glad we went there.
Absolutely, Simon. It was a privilege. It was more than a privilege. It was actually, how do we put this in words? These places are disappearing, and from what I understand, half of these places have been demolished. They're putting some other things in there. They are putting a museum in there, which is good. Whether or not that will be an unbiased museum, giving the nuances of history as we've been discussing today, I doubt it. But if the museum's there by the time you make it to Krampnitz, go and have a look. And look at this video once more, not just this video, but the original video of Krampnitz, because it's a fascinating era of history, and we can learn from history to make a better world for not just us, but future generations. Simon, thank you for this Rueckblick
Thanks for having me, Henning. It's great.
and your very intellectual contribution. And you didn't give me too much of a hard time.
No. We're all good friends here.
So, Chivas Regal, I don't know what we'll have for the next one.
Ah,
Maybe some wine.
yeah.